This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Not everyone is careful with your personal information, which might explain why there's a victim of identity theft every 5 seconds in the U.S. Fortunately, there's LifeLock. LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats to your identity. If your identity is stolen, a U.S.-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year by visiting LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. 3 couples, 4 vacations, a lot to unpack. Watch The 4 Seasons, a new series starring comedy favorites Tina Fey, Steve Carell, Will Forte, Coleman Domingo, and more in a hilarious and heartfelt love letter to long-term relationships. Based on the original Alan Alda film. Watch The 4 Seasons, May 1st, only on Netflix.
That moment when you realize your skincare is actually working. That's Rodan & Fields, the #1 female dermatologist-founded skincare brand in the U.S. Designed by 2 dermatologists who don't just know women's skin, they know how to formulate for it. Rodan & Fields, love what you see. Tap the banner or visit rodanandfields.com/Spotify to get your exclusive welcome offer.
From the Fifth Quarter Studio in Madison, Wisconsin, you're listening to the Basketball Leadership Podcast. Here are your hosts, Steve Collins and Greg Berg.
All right, welcome to the Basketball Leadership Podcast, episode 6. Favorite number, Coach? Nope.
Not yet.
Okay.
You?
No.
All
Getting
right.
closer, though. So we're going to talk about the myths of leadership. I would think this could be 6 hours. We're going to try to keep it less than 15. But
Yeah. I've written about this a lot online. I've written about it in my newsletter. I have 7, I think, myths of leadership, and as we relate them to basketball. But number 1 is the concept of positional leadership. A position is a title. Being elected a captain, being a principal, being a coach, those are just titles. They don't allow, it doesn't mean we're leaders, right? I mean, just because you have a title doesn't mean anything. Leadership is influence. It gives you no street cred.
It gives you no street cred. It doesn't matter on the coach. I got to earn. If I want to be the leader, I got to show them I'm going to be the leader.
Absolutely. And I think it's a mistake. A lot of kids have this false premise that, someone got elected captain and now everyone has to listen to me. Okay. And it never works out. Right. So, you don't need captains. You do need leaders. And so coaches have to be very conscious about how we do that. We're going to talk about that another point, but be careful with positional leadership and make sure kids know the difference between being a leader and having a position, because they're totally different. I think the second one I have is leaders are extroverts. Actually, we talked about the Captain Class book a while back. It actually proved the exact opposite. The best leaders are often more quiet, unassuming behind the scenes. And I think that's a misconception, a myth that we often have.
I think that's
leadership.
A huge myth.
It is.
That look at the kid out there, he's clapping, he's got all the energy. That doesn't necessarily mean that's the leader of the group.
No.
Might be the energy giver, might be the, the guy that gives them, but that doesn't mean that person's the leader. I know. I think that's a huge myth. I think that a lot of
sometimes people think the rah-rah person is the leader. And a lot of times, even in leadership roles, I think sometimes those people gravitate to a leadership position, not necessarily basketball, somewhere else. And they just talk and they don't do. And when you don't do, your influence doesn't go very far.
I'm sorry. I'm laughing because I've been in education for 35 years, and Coach knows why I'm laughing. Now I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
We'll leave it at that. It's because I still need a job. Okay, here we go.
And then, I think leadership is easy. That some people think, well, yeah, I become a leader, or I get in this position and everyone's just going to listen to me and it's easy. And it's the exact opposite. We've talked about this a lot, but when you become a leader, it becomes about everyone else. you really are serving other people when you get in that leadership role. That's not easy. You often have the weight of everyone on your shoulders. Being a high school principal, I tell people the hardest part about this job is, I feel everyone's weight. I know what every teacher is going through, or most of them are going through in personal lives. And you feel that, right? And you want to help them. And the same thing is on a basketball court. The best leaders collectively bring everyone in. It's not about them anymore, and it's not easy. I think the fourth one is leaders are born, not made. I think that's false. Certainly some people have some inherent natural instincts, but leadership is developed over time, and we're all on this continuum of leadership. And it's the reason I built this team leader OS that I did, because we need to develop and grow leaders. So different as us as parents. I mean, how do you grow and help your child grow and develop into being a leader?
Right.
It doesn't just happen.
No. And I think I would put this up there. Yes, I would put this as one of the top ones too. I think it's so true. It's like people just think they didn't learn to just dribble or do other specific things. You had to teach them the way to do that. That's
and it's over time. It doesn't happen overnight. I mean, it's a very systemic process. Number 5, I think there's a big one with kids. The best athletes do not mean they're the best leaders. This is where we get this positional mindset sometimes in coaching. Kids sometimes think best players who everyone has to turn to, and it's just not the case. Right. And if we have to rely on that player to be our leader, and I think as coaches, we're sometimes guilty of that too. Like, we hand the reins over to someone just because they might be a better player on our team, but they don't have the best influence on our team. They're not the best leaders. And I think that's a misconception.
I agree.
And then 2 more, management and leadership being the same. They're not. And you know that in your role as a teacher, and I do as my role as well. But managing is different than leading. Managing is about, organization and helping things run efficiently and all that. That's important. Leadership is about influence and moving people in a direction that you want to go. And then the last one is holding others accountable first. I think we have to hold ourselves accountable first. I think sometimes people get into a leadership role and they think, all right, now I'm going to hold everyone accountable. No, right. you got to it's you first, right?
Look in that mirror first. Yes.
Look in that mirror first. Absolutely. So those are some of the myths. I think some of them are.
So what do you think is what myth do you think is the most out there the most of the 7? I think there's one that the biggest.
To me, I think the one that's out there the most with high school kids is positional leadership. I think that one's a big one. And I say that because all too often we hear of people that get put in this position and all of a sudden they get power trips. And you see that with kids. I'm a captain. Yeah. You get these parents that fight about their kid wanting to be a captain or the kid be a captain. They don't want it for the right reason.
To put it on their resume for applying.
Yeah. And they think that people are going to listen to them because they have this title. And those teams, they're just miserable experiences when that happens. I mean, I hear about it a lot. I think with kids, that's a big one. Which one do you think?
No, I would think that they're born, and that one would probably be the most. It's like we have to teach them how to lead and do those things. But the whole captain, we'll get into that next month and some of the stuff about captains and leaders and stuff. We could talk 6 hours about that, but no, I agree. And the problem is with anything, there's myths. So the issue is, how do you change those myths? How do you there's lots of different ways of going through these different things. I think all of them, I think they're all out there, but again, it goes back to the rah guy. Everyone thinks that's your leader, or your star is your leader. It's like, well, that's not, like you said, the percentage of that happening is so small that it doesn't, it's not true.
And if you think, like when you said leaders are born, I mean, if you really believe that, if people believe that, it's such a fixed mindset.
Oh yeah.
Why are we even in coaching and education if we think leaders are born? Then we just think someone's inherently has math skills as well, or inherently has
and
physical skills.
People are born like, okay, so I'm going to take someone like Barack Obama. Yeah. Look at him. But part of that was who he was as a human being, but a lot of that was his mother, where he went to school, how he, like, all those things come into play about the type of quote unquote leader that, led our country for 8 years. Yes, obviously a very smart man, and obviously, but read a little bit on him and what his mother did for him, and expect all that stuff. She helped him become a leader before, when he was young, to be honest with you. And so did his basketball.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. And the influence that parents have and teachers and coaches have on kids throughout this whole process. I mean, we have an incredible influence on kids.
It's unbelievable. I talked about this weekend with a bunch of friends, and it's like, I asked my seniors, I said, list every one of your elementary school teachers. They can do it. I can list all my elementary school teachers. You know why? Because those people had huge influences on me, because I saw them all year for a year at a really important part of my life. And they all did. Can I tell you my 10th grade English teacher? Not really, but I can tell you my 4th grade teacher. I can tell you my 5th
and you can tell me all your coaches.
Yes, I can definitely tell you all my coaches. Definitely tell you all my coaches. All right. Anything else on that, Coach? Go through those one more time so everybody can get them down again.
The 7 myths. We have positional leadership. We have leaders being extroverts. Leadership being easy, leaders being born, not made. Best athletes equate to being our best leaders. That's false. Management and leadership being the same. And then the fact that we don't have to hold ourselves accountable first when we're in leadership role. It's all about holding yourself accountable, leading by example before you serve others in that role.
I love that. All right. Thank you, Coach.
All right. Thank you.